Why does a grease-stained garage feel more like home than a high-tech charging station? It's not just about the engine noise, it's about a deep-seated psychological need for agency. While modern EVs offer silent efficiency, they strip away the tactile soul and mechanical feedback that actually anchors your identity. Picture yourself sitting inside a brand new 2026 electric vehicle. The cabin is immaculate. The ride is whisper quiet. You press the accelerator and it launches forward with zero drama, zero sound, zero ceremony. By every measurable standard, this is a superior machine. And yet, for millions of classic car owners around the world, that silence doesn't feel like progress. It feels like something died. But why? The answer isn't in the horsepower figures or the charging times. It lives deeper, in the way the human brain is wired to interact with the physical world. There's a concept in psychology called mechanical sympathy. It describes the state where a driver no longer perceives their vehicle as a tool, they perceive it as a living partner. Every vibration through the seat is a pulse, every groan of the chassis is a voice. The slight hesitation of a carbureted engine on a cold morning isn't a flaw, it's a personality trait. And when those signals disappear, when the machine becomes silent, frictionless, and perfectly obedient, the brain doesn't register it as an upgrade. The brain registers it as a void. Because for decades, that sensory feedback loop wasn't just telling the driver about the car, it was telling the driver something about themselves. Here's something that cognitive psychology has shown us repeatedly. The objects we interact with physically during emotionally significant moments become memory anchors. They don't just store information, they become the memory itself. Think about the smell of gasoline. For many classic car owners, that's not an unpleasant chemical odor. That's the smell of the first time they drove alone at 17. That's the smell of a father's garage on a Saturday morning. That's the smell of freedom before it had to be efficient. The resistance of a heavy clutch pedal isn't just a mechanical inconvenience, it's proof that your skill matters, that your body is actively participating in the act of motion, that the machine only obeys because you know what you're doing. Now look at the interior of a modern premium EV. One large screen, a smooth, minimalist dashboard, no dials to read, no levers to pull, no surfaces worn down by years of use. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's also nothing of you in it. For classic car owners, their vehicle isn't transportation, it's a physical archive of who they are. Every scratch, every repair, every modification is a chapter. When they're asked to trade that for something sterile and optimized, they're not being asked to switch cars, they're being asked to abandon a piece of their biography. There's a quiet anxiety growing among car enthusiasts, and it rarely gets named directly, so let me name it. When you buy a modern electric vehicle, you may own the hardware, but you don't fully own the experience. Open the hood of a 1969 Mustang. You can see everything. The carburetor sits right there, a beautiful, mechanical, completely legible object. You can pull it apart, clean it, understand exactly why it's doing what it's doing. You hold the knowledge, you hold the power. Now consider the sealed, proprietary software system governing a modern EV's powertrain. It's a black box, protected by intellectual property law. You can't read it, touch it, or modify it. And the manufacturer, they can send an over-the-air update overnight, adjusting performance, altering features, even disabling capabilities you were using yesterday without asking your permission. Psychologists call this the loss of locus of control, the feeling that the outcomes in your life are determined by external forces rather than your own choices and actions. And here's what makes it so insidious. It doesn't feel dramatic. There's no single moment where you notice it's gone. It just quietly erodes. A carburetor you can rebuild with your hands, that's transparency. That's agency. A proprietary algorithm inside an 800-volt battery system, that's a relationship where you've signed up as a subscriber, not an owner. And the classic car owner's nervous system knows the difference, even if they can't articulate it.
Let me ask you something that sounds simple but isn't. Why would anyone enjoy their car breaking down? And yet, talk to almost any classic car enthusiast long enough and you'll find something strange. The breakdowns are part of the story they tell with pride. That time the fuel pump failed 3 hours from home, the weekend they spent chasing an electrical gremlin through the entire wiring harness, the morning the engine wouldn't start and they stood in the driveway, coffee in hand, slowly working through the problem like a puzzle. Positive psychology has a term for this: active mastery, the deep neurological satisfaction that comes from solving a complex physical problem with your own hands. When you diagnose a mechanical fault, find the solution, and feel the engine roar back to life, your brain doesn't just feel relief, it feels capable. And that capability, repeated, practiced, reinforced, becomes part of how you understand yourself as a person. The unreliability of a classic car isn't a bug, it's the mechanism by which the bond is built. Every repair deepens the relationship. Every solved problem adds another layer to the emotional contract between driver and machine. But modern high-voltage EV systems are legally and practically off-limits to the amateur. High-voltage certification required, dealer access only. An entire generation of weekend mechanics, people who define themselves by their ability to keep something alive with their own intelligence and their own hands, are being quietly made obsolete. That loss is not just economic, it's existential. We live in a world that has become extraordinarily good at removing friction. An algorithm decides what you watch next, a navigation app decides which route you take, an AI assistant drafts your emails, your car's braking system decides at a certain speed that it knows better than you do. Layer by layer, the need for human judgment is being quietly optimized away. And for a very specific kind of person, someone who came of age in an era when competence was earned, when machines required your full attention and rewarded your skill, this is not comfort, this is slow suffocation. The deliberate choice to drive a carbureted, manually shifted, mechanically demanding vehicle in 2026 is not ignorance, it is not stubbornness, it is a psychological statement. It says, I am still here. My hands still matter. This machine responds to my judgment, not to a software engineer's prediction of what I should want. In a world of seamless, silent automation, friction has become a form of meaning. The imperfect, unreliable, demanding nature of a classic car isn't a limitation to be overcome, it is the entire point. Because it is precisely through that difficulty, that negotiation, that engagement, that the driver knows with absolute certainty that they are the one doing the driving. And so perhaps the real question that the automotive future needs to ask isn't, how do we make driving more efficient? Perhaps the question is, what does it cost us psychologically when we make it too easy? Because if we optimize away every last trace of difficulty, we may build the perfect vehicle, but we might lose the driver in the process. So, where do you land on this? Is the future of driving about reaching the destination as smoothly as possible? Or is there something irreplaceable about the journey, the noise, the weight, the effort, the aliveness of it? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if this kind of psychology meets real-world analysis is what you're here for, there's a lot more where that came from. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.